Let's start it with our first news. Islam Makhachev, the reigning UFC lightweight champion who is now preparing for his move up to welterweight, recently addressed the media during a press conference with Russian outlet Tower GSK. In his session with reporters, Makhachev covered a wide range of topics, including his upcoming clash with Jack Della Maddalena, his thoughts on Ilia Topuria, and the ongoing discussion around a potential rematch with Arman Tsarukyan. Makhachev began by reassuring fans about his current state of health and fitness. He explained that the process of adjusting to the welterweight division, where he will soon compete for the 170-pound title, has been smooth. According to him, the weight transition is not only manageable, but actually feels natural. He emphasized that his training camp is going perfectly and that he is fully locked in on his next challenge. Facing Jack Della Maddalena will be a major step for Makhachev, and he made it clear that nothing else is on his mind until that fight is done. The conversation then shifted to Ilia Topuria, the undefeated featherweight champion who has been linked to a possible super fight with Makhachev. The Russian champion acknowledged that there have indeed been preliminary talks with the UFC regarding this matchup, but he stressed that nothing concrete will happen until after his title fight with Maddalena. He admitted he didn't want to reveal too much about Topuria at this stage as his full focus remains on the immediate task ahead. Still, Makhachev did not close the door on that matchup, hinting that it could very well materialize in the future. When pressed about Arman Tsarukyan, who many fans believe is one of the toughest challengers at lightweight, Makhachev offered an honest response. He explained that it would be difficult to find the motivation to cut back down to 155 pounds solely to face Tsarukyan. While he respects Arman as a fighter, the only scenario that excites him enough to make that difficult weight cut again would be a high-profile super fight with Ilia Topuria. Makhachev also reminded the media that a fight with Topuria was very close to being finalized earlier this year. However, those plans were disrupted when Belal Muhammad lost his welterweight title to Jack Della Maddalena, shifting the UFC's matchmaking priorities. Despite his focus on Maddalena, Makhachev did not hold back when assessing Topuria's current trajectory. He suggested that Topuria has been avoiding a showdown with Arman Tsarukyan, a fight Makhachev believes would present the toughest test of Topuria's career. He argued that Tsarukyan's relentless pace, wrestling, and all-around skill set would force Topuria into the deepest waters he has ever experienced inside the Octagon. Looking beyond his immediate bout, Makhachev revealed that Team Khabib is already considering possible opponents for a welterweight title defense. Names like Shavkat Rakhmonov and Kamaru Usman are being mentioned as the most likely challengers, depending on how the division unfolds. In summary, Islam Makhachev remains laser-focused on his fight with Jack Della Maddalena, but is also aware of the bigger picture. He has not ruled out a move back to lightweight, but only if the stakes are significant enough, namely a super fight with Ilia Topuria. For now, he stands ready to defend his legacy across two weight classes while keeping his eyes firmly on the immediate task of conquering welterweight. Move on to another news. Dana White under fire after UFC fighter reveals alarming post-fight neglect. Dana White and the UFC are once again under heavy scrutiny after shocking claims from Irish fighter Kiefer Crosby surfaced online, sparking outrage across the MMA community. Crosby, who recently competed at UFC Shanghai against Nuraj Tuyake, described a disturbing lack of medical care following his brutal knockout loss, an ordeal he compared to being treated like a dog. The controversy began after Crosby absorbed a devastating knockout, which also included an illegal knee strike that many believe should have resulted in more than just a point deduction. Instead of receiving the type of post-fight care expected at the highest level of the sport, Crosby claims he was virtually abandoned by the organization. According to his own account, no doctor came to check on him in the aftermath of the fight. There were no concussion protocols, no brain scans, and no neurological assessments to ensure his safety. He explained that he was quickly stitched up, placed in a taxi, and left to deal with a major concussion and severe whiplash entirely on his own. "This is how they treat us," Crosby vented on Instagram. "No doctor checked on me, no brain scan organized, no concussion test, no questions asked about how I was doing. No medication was given despite the fact that I was clearly concussed and suffering from whiplash. They just stitched me up, threw me in a taxi, and told me good luck. Nobody cares. We put our lives on the line every time we step into that cage, and to be treated like a dog afterwards is disgraceful." Crosby's words have struck a nerve with both fighters and fans. He described the experience as a senseless massacre, emphasizing that anyone watching the fight could clearly see he was disoriented, bleeding, and in no condition to make quick decisions about his health. This is not the first time such concerns have been raised about UFC events held abroad. Veteran lightweight Mark Diakise publicly supported Crosby's claims. revealing that he too felt abandoned after a fight outside the United States. He explained that without a proper athletic commission overseeing the events, fighters are often left vulnerable once the Octagon doors close. The issue lies in how the UFC regulates itself when promoting international events in countries without established athletic commissions. While the promotion claims to follow Nevada State Athletic Commission (NSA) standards, critics argue that those policies often fall short in real time, especially when it comes to fighter safety. The lack of independent oversight means the UFC essentially polices itself, and stories like Crosby's highlight the risks of that approach. The reaction from fans has been swift and harsh. Many are calling out Dana White directly, demanding accountability and insisting that the UFC must improve its medical and regulatory practices when staging global events. Fighter safety has always been a sensitive topic in MMA, and this incident only intensifies the pressure on the promotion to implement stronger safeguards. As Crosby's story continues to circulate, the ball is now in the UFC's court. Will they acknowledge the problem and enact reforms, or continue to brush aside these serious accusations? For a sport built on toughness and sacrifice, the expectation from fighters and fans alike is simple: their health and safety must come first. Move on to another news. Josh Thompson breaks down Mauricio Ruffy's crushing loss to Benoit Saint-Denis at UFC Paris. UFC Paris was a monumental night for French MMA, and no fighter embodied that more than Benoit Saint-Denis. The French lightweight put on a dominant display, securing a decisive victory over Mauricio Ruffy, leaving analysts and fans stunned by the one-sided performance. Among those breaking down the fight was former UFC fighter and analyst Josh Thompson, who alongside Big John McCarthy offered a candid assessment of what went wrong for the young Brazilian. Saint-Denis didn't just defeat Ruffy, he dismantled him. From the opening moments of the fight, it was clear that Saint-Denis was the stronger, more composed, and more determined competitor. His relentless pressure, heavy grappling, and suffocating control left Ruffy with no answers. The finish came when Saint-Denis folded him on the ground and forced a tap, making it clear there was no doubt about who controlled the fight from start to finish. Josh Thompson emphasized that the biggest issue for Ruffy wasn't just technical, it was mental. He pointed out that when you're facing a heavy grappler, the fight becomes as much about your mindset as your skills. When you get taken down, Thompson said, you don't just give up, you fight to get back up. He compared Ruffy's reaction to moments in his own career, where the mentality was always, even if you get taken down, you scramble, you work, and you make your opponent earn every second of control. In contrast, Thompson observed that Ruffy seemed to mentally check out after the first takedown, overwhelmed by the strength and pressure of Saint-Denis. Big John McCarthy echoed these thoughts, adding even more perspective by stating that the fight looked like a #1 contender versus a number 25. The gap in dominance was that wide. He noted that Ruffy didn't display the urgency or determination that top fighters have when facing adversity. Instead, once Saint-Denis imposed his game plan, Ruffy looked lost and unwilling to dig deep to fight back. Thompson elaborated on how Saint-Denis' physicality played a major role. He described the Frenchman as dense, with a body type that feels incredibly heavy and controlling in grappling exchanges. When he grabs you, hangs on you, and holds you, you realize how strong he really is. It's draining, Thompson explained. For Ruffy, this meant that after the first takedown, the fight became a mountain too steep to climb. By the second takedown, Thompson argued, Ruffy's body language and mentality suggested he no longer wanted to be in the cage. Despite the lopsided loss, Thompson didn't dismiss Ruffy's potential. He acknowledged the Brazilian's talent and abilities, but emphasized that if Ruffy wants to compete at the highest level, he must return to the drawing board and focus on wrestling. Without that foundation, he'll continue to struggle against physically imposing grapplers like Saint-Denis. For Saint-Denis, UFC Paris was more than just a win, it was a statement. Going a perfect 5-0 on the card, French fighters electrified their home crowd, and Saint-Denis stood out as one of the brightest stars. For Ruffy and his team, however, the loss is a wake-up call, serving as a reminder that raw skill must be matched with mental toughness and preparation. 2025 has already been a tough year for Ruffy's camp, the Fighting Nerds, with multiple losses piling up. Only Gene Silva has managed to stay undefeated so far, keeping their hopes alive. But if Ruffy can take the lessons from this loss, rebuild his wrestling, and strengthen his mentality, there's still a path forward. For now, the spotlight belongs to Benoit Saint-Denis, whose dominance in Paris proved that he is not just a hometown hero, but a serious contender in the lightweight division. Move on to another news. Paddy Pimblett preparing for potential showdown with Ilia Topuria. Paddy, the baddie. Pimblett has his eyes set on one of the most dangerous matchups of his career, a potential clash with rising featherweight champion Ilia Topuria. Known for his colorful personality and relentless grappling game, Pimblett is taking no chances in his preparation. He has been hard at work sharpening his striking, fully aware that Topuria's boxing and power have made him one of the most feared fighters in the division. Recently, Pimblett opened up about how his training camp has been going. He explained that he has been pushing himself through grueling sessions, logging 5 full rounds on the pads and sparring to make sure his striking improves. 5 rounds in the bag striking time, he said. To be honest, it didn't feel great today. Last week though, my striking felt sharp and I put in 5 strong rounds with Luke. Maybe I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed today, but I know this is what I've got to work on. If I'm going to fight Ilia, my striking timing has to be better. While Pimblett acknowledged that his striking remains a work in progress, he made it clear that his grappling is where he feels untouchable. His confidence on the mat continues to be his biggest weapon. My grappling always feels phenomenal, he emphasized. As you can see in those rounds, once I get people on the floor, they don't get back up. I smother people, just like Dricus du Plessis did this past weekend. Once I drag you down and I'm on top, you're not going anywhere. I control the position, I make you feel my weight, and I land shots at the same time. That's my game. When I get on top of someone, they're not getting up. It's no secret that Pimblett's path to victory against Topuria will depend heavily on whether he can impose that grappling-heavy style. Topuria has shown devastating knockout power, flattening opponents with clean combinations and brutal accuracy. If Pimblett can't neutralize the Spaniard's striking, it could be a rough night inside the Octagon. That's why his renewed focus on sharpening his timing and distance management on the feet is so critical. Still, Pimblett's self-belief remains strong. His ability to control fights once they hit the canvas has carried him to success in the UFC so far, and he believes that if he gets Topuria down, the same story will play out. By suffocating opponents, making them carry his weight, and delivering punishing ground and pound, Pimblett looks to drag fights into his world, where his relentless pace and pressure break opponents down. As fans speculate about whether the UFC will officially book Pimblett versus Topuria, both fighters continue to generate headlines. Topuria, the undefeated Spanish-Georgian powerhouse, has been calling for legacy fights and eyeing future super bouts. Pimblett, meanwhile, is determined to prove he belongs at the elite level and silence critics who doubt his ability to hang with the very best. If the matchup does come together, it will be one of the most intriguing clashes of styles the featherweight division has seen in years. Topuria's lethal striking versus Pimblett's suffocating grappling. For now, the baddie is in the gym, sharpening every tool he has, preparing for the toughest test of his career. Move on to another news. Benoit Saint-Denis delivered a commanding performance, securing a second-round submission victory over Mauricio Ruffy. The fight showcased Saint-Denis' relentless pressure, his well-rounded skill set, and his ability to capitalize on his opponent's weaknesses. From the opening bell, it was clear that Saint-Denis was determined to impose his will, while Ruffy appeared hesitant and struggled to find his rhythm. Islam Makhachev, the reigning UFC lightweight champion, reacted sharply to the result. In his assessment, Makhachev pointed out that win or lose, Mauricio Ruffy displayed zero grappling. He went further by offering blunt advice: train more, speak less. That's the key to success. Coming from a champion known for his mastery of wrestling and grappling, these words carried significant weight and underscored the gap in Ruffy's game. MMA analyst Dean Thomas also shared his candid take, expressing disappointment in Ruffy's performance. "I've been high on Ruffy since he entered the UFC," Thomas explained. "We've made comparisons between him and Conor McGregor, and I expected more, especially fighting someone as wild and aggressive as Benoit Saint-Denis. I thought Ruffy would be able to stay composed and pick him apart. Instead, the fight quickly unraveled for Ruffy. A powerful body kick from Saint-Denis visibly rattled him early on. Moments later, a crushing head kick left Ruffy even more unsettled. Those strikes seemed to completely derail his game plan. According to Thomas, that was the turning point. He didn't look like he wanted to fight anymore. He didn't want to be in there. This lack of resilience came as a surprise to many, as Ruffy had been touted as a promising rising star. Thomas admitted he was wrong in his prediction. "Benoit Saint-Denis made me eat my words tonight," he said. "I didn't expect him to dominate the way he did, but he proved me wrong, and while I respect that, Mauricio Ruffy also made me eat my words. Maybe he's not as good as we thought, at least not yet. He has work to do." Fans also witnessed Ian Gary's live reaction to Ruffy's loss, which captured the shock and surprise across the MMA community. After his win, Benoit Saint-Denis spoke with confidence about his performance. "The God of War is back," he declared proudly. "It felt great because of the preparation I had with my camp. We worked on everything, Boxing, wrestling, striking, the finish came the way we planned it. Saint-Denis praised Ruffy's power and precision, but pointed out his flaws. He thinks a lot, he picks his shots carefully and hits hard when he lands, but he doesn't land often enough. Looking ahead, Saint-Denis made his ambitions clear. I've already beaten 2 fighters ranked in the top 15, now I want someone in the top 10. Fighting at Madison Square Garden was a blessing, and I'm ready for the next step. With this win, Benoit Saint-Denis solidified his reputation as a dangerous contender. Mauricio Ruffy, meanwhile, faces hard questions about his future and the work needed to reach the level expected of him.